what I do is a translation of the English language, and I spell it Trance, with the idea that words put us in a trance. They cast spells on our consciousness. There's no end of the play that you can have, and it does enlighten you. It does awaken awareness. And I've been at this for many, many years, but the language is immense. So there's so much left to be discovered. Essentially, that there are times of chaos and stress. There are beings from the elemental kingdom who incarnate humanly to help people grow into greater harmony with nature. And when I read that, I thought, thank God, some validation. And Jeffrey has told me that I think the human beings incarnate on the 8th plane. On the 10th plane is the Devic kingdom. These are like department heads. The Deva of the wind, the Deva of the water. These are not gods that are being worshipped as gods. And beings may go back and forth between the 8th and 10th kingdom, their way to the 14th level. I have not studied the Vedas, but this is what Jeffrey explains to me. So when I read that, I thought, this is not a silly fantasy. This was an intuition that I had early on. And he has said that in India, people understand that they may bring through someone from the Devic kingdom. And someone, a child who may just go wandering off after some gurus or wise beings because this is who they are. So there's a great deal more understanding of the dimensions of reality in that culture than in this one. When language is used to subvert true intention and people are controlled by sound bites and march under their banner without knowing what they mean, this is part of the spell casting that goes on. And another reason why we need collectively and creatively to take command of the English language and tune it to a higher frequency to facilitate our essential evolutionary leap from humankind to human kindness.
Welcome to the SEEEN. I'm Mystic Mark.
And I'm Esoterra, and today we spoke with Laurel Airica,
the meta-whimsical lingual physicist, to discuss with us the synchromystic exploration of the ever-expanding now. We're glad you're here with us.
Enjoy the ride.
She is Laurel Airica, the poet herself from the ethereal realm. Laurel, how are you today?
I'm really good, and I'm so delighted to be with the two of you because we are clearly very resonant kindred spirits. So thank you for this opportunity.
It's a pleasure, and the pleasure is all ours. Our goal with this podcast is to give people the tools to change their life for the better. And I think understanding word magic is essential to this process. So if you will, Laurel, please share with us how this came to you. When did this sort of the magic of word come to mind first?
Well, I know I have shared this elsewhere. I, as a child, was fascinated by words. I spoke early, and I do remember saying to my parents, I bet I now know all the words in the English language. And I was probably 3 or 4. And in any case, I started looking at words and finding interesting things in their spelling, like level is a level word, frontward and backward, and opposite begins with opposites, OPPO. And the word parallel has 3 parallel lines. So I was looking at that, and most of all, what captured my imagination are words that have the same name, even though they are seemingly unrelated to each other. And the word for that is homonym. And the first homonym for me was bat. A man told me that when he delivered my father's sound system, a bat had flown out of the box into the tree outside. And so I went and stood by the tree, and at some point realized I was expecting a baseball bat to be hanging from it. And so when I saw that everything did not have its own name, but it had to, it had a resonant resident in the same vibration that may have no relationship to each other. And at that time, and this is late 40s, at that time, the idea that words had a significant relationship through sound rather than simply through meaning was considered a joke. And it was called a pun. And puns were further considered the lowest form of humor. And so over the years, I started collecting these bedfellows. For instance, well, I have my feriography about an elemental being who goes through the looking glass into this dimension and has to deconstruct the language to find her way back home again. And so she says at one point, I will give you some examples that are favorite ones of mine. The fact that praying sounds so savage, yet it also sounds divine. Or how about the way the prophet has become our bottom line? Now add worship or worship, parish or perish, and it's easy to see why the world's so nightmarish. So I looked at these as significant synchronicities. And the word coincidence, and most, things are dismissed as coincidence, but all that word is really saying is, it is a coincidence. But at the same time, it is connoting that the fact that these disparate meanings came into the same sound at this, that it's insignificant. But how do we really know that? I also look at coincidence as co-inside dance. So I feel in pursuit of that bat, that first pun I heard, I used what a friend called by accident echolocution to find my way tunneling through the English language sound system and finding these words that resonate and putting them together like pieces of a puzzle to get a picture of the consciousness of the culture as well as higher consciousness. And I'm wondering if that sounds very clear to you. I'm trying to condense a lot of ideas into a few moments of speech. So.
No, and you know what? This is a good opportunity to point out for people who might be listening to this and thinking, oh no, I lost track of what she was saying. I always think of this podcasting thing as such a wonderful opportunity to learn because of that rewind button and listen to it again and layer upon layer. If you listen to something once or twice, it goes into your subconscious and conscious mind, and you might find yourself repeating these rhymes by accident, a couple weeks down the road. So for those who may have, felt like, oh, wow, that's a lot of information to digest, don't be, don't put yourself down for that. I think that's a big part of my learning process is digesting this information at a pace that works for me.
Well, here's what else is going on is that I've shared on a lot of different podcasts. So I'm endeavoring to synthesize and condense, and it may not be clear to people who are unfamiliar with my work. So if it wasn't clear, don't look at it as a deficit on your part, but that I can do a better job of sharing what I'm intending to say. And so many people come to my work through the video, The Secret Spells of the English Language. And I posted that in 2010. And in 2015, a woman put it on the Facebook page of Collective Evolution, and it immediately went, I don't call it going viral, I call it going spiral or global, because the idea that going viral is the height of success on the internet has been kind of blown out of the water since the world has gone viral and we're not very happy with it. So this Secret Spells of the English Language shares what I call our premier life sentence. And this was how I put together some of the words that I found that have the same sound and different meaning behind them. And so these secret spells, so here is a life sentence. And it is that we awake each morning and go off during the weekdays to earn our living at various jobs and undertakings until we come to the weekend. And everyone agrees that that's just a normal way of life. However, more people die of heart failure statistically between 6 and 10 a.m. Monday morning than any other time of the week. So I explain that what I do is a translation of the English language, and I spell it Trance, with the idea that words put us in a trance. They cast spells on our consciousness. And when you translate that life sentence, you realize that awake in mourning, awake is a funeral party for the dead. Mourning is the state we're in when we attend a wake. So when we say to someone, good morning, we're essentially subliminally saying good grief. And we would have to be staggering around like zombies in a week days to earn the living, since urns are vases for the ashes of the dead. And we call our jobs undertakings. Job itself is a Hebrew word for persecuted. We talk about racing to meet deadlines instead of lifelines. And then what we get at the end of this perverse bargain with life is progressively weakened. So I never like to say to someone, have a good weekend. I'd rather say, have a good strength end, because it is about refreshment and regrouping. And our most frequent greeting to each other is hello. And if you reverse the syllables, it becomes oh hell. And we call 10 years of this kind of living, we call it a decade. And many in the UK pronounce it decade. And so I once asked a group of people, what shall we do about hello? And one woman suggested, how about hallow? And to hallow is to make holy, to recognize as sacred. So when we say hallow to each other, it's somewhat equivalent to namaste. My own essence, my own divine essence greets that within you. So when I first put that sentence together, I thought, well, sometime in the 90s, I thought, well, this is really interesting, but there was a big so what to it. And then I got the answer, which is that language is software, and English is the leading software of the Western mind. And it's filled with cultural biases akin to computer viruses that infect our thinking with an antiquated and manipulated vision of reality promulgated by the church as an instrument of mind control at a time when people had to surrender their minds if they wanted to keep their heads about them, quite literally. And so this is the church as an authoritarian force seeking to dominate consciousness on the planet. And we have other authoritarian sources seeking to do the very same thing at this time. And so, given that the word is said to be not only in Genesis, but in the Genesis myths of Eastern and indigenous cultures, it's equated with God. And so we have the power of the word. Scripture says life and death are in the power of the tongue, and declare a thing and it shall be done unto you. So we have been inculcated, if you've had early religious training, with this thought that words are the ultimate creative force on the planet. Yet we haven't demonstrated any sort of faith in that capacity we have as speakers of the word. And so a vision I hold is that here we are, English is the most spoken language on the planet. There are more native speakers of Chinese, but when you look at people who know English as a second or third or whatever language, there are more English speakers, and English is evidently the language of the birds. And I learned after my question about so what, about this coincidence, this coincidence of all of these words that are ordinary words and frequently used, and yet on the level of sound have another layer of meaning that can color our sense of things and forms the dark glasses through which we view the world, that we can collectively upgrade it. And I found that Confucius said, if given charge of the governance of a country, the first thing he would do would be to correct the language. And Orwell said, politics corrupts language, and language once corrupted has corrupting real world influence. But we can create improvements by starting at the verbal end. And on my website, Word Magic Global, I have a whole page of words on words, a collection of quotes from many people about the power of the word and about the necessity of evolving the language to evolve human consciousness. So this is something we could do quite rapidly and find out, is our faith in the power of the word well-founded? What would happen if many of us started getting really creative with language and sharing the upgrades that occur? And for instance, a lot of people now, rather than saying good morning, are saying grand rising. And I looked at the word intelligent and realized that there's really nothing smart about a brain without a heart. And so the word needs just one more syllable to turn into intelligental, which is about combining the heart and the mind. And the heart has a compass in it, and that compass is compassion. So that's compass and ION. So anyway, the word language, English, is deeply informing and has been a major education for me just by playing with words.
Right on, absolutely. Yeah, and I know that in this genre, especially this conspiracy genre, we hear a lot of people talk about, you know, the secret meaning of words and numbers and how they're used. And I think that it can get a little out there, it can get a little far-fetched, but what resonates so deeply with your message, Laurel, is how commonsensical it is. And I love that portion of one of your prose that says like how uncommon common sense is, because it just seems like some of these things are supposed to be obvious to us and unfortunately are not. And I think personally I get a little lost in like the numbers sometimes and how the numbers connect to each letter. But have you looked at the significance of numbers in the same way you have words?
I haven't. And the first part of the word numbers is numb, N-U-M-B. And I just don't percolate with numbers the way I do with words. And I've found that everyone I've ever encountered who does unusual things with words all seem to have their own angle on it. And so numbers, I am sure, are very enlightening. And I've looked at it a little, but I just, my mind doesn't enjoy it as much. And there's such richness just in ordinary words. So, and I know where I was on many occasions when well, for instance, when I looked and saw, oh my goodness, the word earth is the same as the word heart. It's just where you put the letter H. And I mean, that in itself is a profound recognition. And I've asked children, what do you think is the significance of that? And one little boy of 7 said, well, maybe it means that the earth is the heart of the solar system. And another child said, well, the earth is the heart of our lives. So one of my taglines is that word magic has the power to turn youngsters into punsters and punsters into pundits in the Sanskrit sense of a pandit or a wise being. And we all are innately wise. Children have fresh perception and such playful, open hearts. And that's where creativity comes from. And creativity is where so much wisdom comes to the fore. So most of us through the education system lose the faith we had as young children in our own capacity to be superheroes and enchanted elementals. But I believe that children pretend to be that because it is a pretendency. It is an innate knowing that our capacity is so much greater than this limited human body-mind system. And this, of all times, is the time to rediscover those capacities. And for me, playing with words has been a way of learning so much more. Like, just people have noticed disease is dis-ease and history is his story. It's not a factual accounting of events, but the victor's telling of the tale. However, there aren't very many other words, I can't think of any at the moment, that are recognitions that the language is constantly speaking back to us and echoing and reflecting us. And when you play with words and you come upon one of these amazing self-defining words, you realize this is already in the language that I speak. This wisdom is innate to me. This is a reflection of who I truly am, someone with vision, with eyes to see and ears to hear, who has been dissuaded. We're told to listen and look. We're told to watch what you say instead of watch and listen, and told that puns are the lowest form of humor. So we have been distracted from seeing what's right before our very eyes. And just play with words, turn them inside out and upside down and backward, and you will discover a lot of other intelligence within them that can be deeply informing.
Is that The echolocution.
Yes, that's what,
That's it.
that was a slip of the tongue when my friend said, you navigate by echolocution. She meant echolocation, of course, but it is because I think of language as like a hall of mirrors and an echo chamber. We're surrounded by it, it's reflecting us, and we have been ignoring it. And also, it's fascinating, so many words that indicate our capacity and higher intelligence are lost. They're redefined or they're dropped from the dictionary. And we forget, without a word, you can't entertain the possibility of the power of your consciousness. And I have a friend, Jeffrey Armstrong, who has been studying the Vedas for 50 years and recently came out with his own radical translation of the Bhagavad Gita, and he talks about how English has colonized Sanskrit. Even in the Hindu culture, think you can make word for word substitutions between Sanskrit and English, and you can't, because Sanskrit has it has almost twice as many letters in the alphabet, and it has words about levels of consciousness that we can't contemplate because we don't have the language for it. And so that's another reason for getting creative and starting to invent words that have the capacity to convey a higher frequency of consciousness in our communications and inspire a greater frequency of kindness in our interactions. Because I look at that earth-heart parallel as a clear indication that we are on planet Earth, EARTH, we are to get a heart. And that and our third ear is located in our heart. And when we put our ear to the earth and listen to our hearts, we become oracles, we become truth tellers. And there's so many layers upon layers of significance in simple, familiar, ordinary words. And for me, ultimately, we're here on planet Earth to learn to love, because it is Earth heart. And with global warming of the earth, the only thing that will save us from suicidal tendencies is global warming of the heart, so that we share our limited resources and inspire higher consciousness as we speak in each other.
Right, and this brings to mind the story of the Tower of Babel, and doesn't it seem like, another one of these coincidences that when two people don't see eye to eye, they tend to babble when they argue with each other, and the Tower of Babel is all about splitting the one language into all these different languages. And I tend to think that, we can find so much more truth in the root meaning of words than we can in the word's definition itself. And I think that when we trace the prefixes and the suffixes of certain words, we're able to find a level of meaning that might be not obvious, not so common sense, like most of the more fun ones. But, have you looked into the prefixes and the suffixes and how those factor in here?
A little bit, but etymologies have not been my focus. I really enjoy hearing those who have focused in that direction. I look at what I call linguistic synchronicities, which are, wondering what is the magnetic force that causes words and sounds from different cultures, continents, and centuries to come into resonance with each other. So the two forms of pray, P-R-A-Y and P-R-E-Y, do not come from the same roots, but they coincide anyway. So they are these linguistic Synchronicities. And roots, of course, has a second a second word in it, and that's ROUTES, and pathways.
Yeah.
And so etymologies are about not only the roots of words, but the roots they've taken to take hold in one culture or another. So, I mean, there's no end of the play that you can have, and it does enlighten you. It does awaken awareness. And I've been at this for many, many years, but the language is immense. So there's so much left to be discovered. And in terms of the word, or word's meaning or definition, let me see if I can find, I know where I have it. I wrote a piece called The Meaning of Mean. And we talk about what a word means, but what does mean? And so just reading a paragraph from a blog I wrote, mean means many things in addition to intention and signification. It also means offensive, selfish, nasty, small-minded, ignoble, stingy, inferior in quality, of little importance, bad-tempered, in poor condition, shabby, and average. And demean means to debase and to degrade. Anyway, it goes on from there. So there's an interesting word. What does a word mean? Well, what do you mean by mean? And why are we using that word to define something essentially sacred? And let's see if I can find a quote. Yeah, I wrote a blog last year around this time called Politics is No Party. And in it, I quote Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., who was a 19th century physician and poet and highly educated influencer. And he said, life and language are alike sacred. Homicide and verbicide, that is, violent treatment of a word with fatal results to its legitimate meaning, which is its life, are alike forbidden. And Socrates said that incorrect language is not only a mistake, it implants evil in men's souls. So then we have the word definition, and in definition, it starts with deafen. We are deafened to our definitions. And so how can you be of sound mind if that's the case, if you're deafened to all these other reverberations within a single word?
Right. Right. And even the word explain, things might seem so plain when we let the wrong people explain things to us, and I think what you do is very much what was spoken of, this song of the birds, because it's like spirit rings, sing, you're singing this stuff into existence for people. It's resonating with them as they're listening, whether they're listening to this, today, tomorrow, in the future, 20 years from now. You listening right now, this is having a impact on you on a subtle level. The words, and every single word you hear throughout your day, throughout your life, and every word you speak into existence has that same impact. So once we understand the weight we're carrying with our words, we try to be a little lighter, so we're not hitting people with such strong vibration, definition, and meaning, what I meant to say. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have said it in the first place.
Well, and we have phrases like shooting off our mouths and making a point and trash talking. And when you're trash talking, I mean, there are words with ugly intention in them, in your mouth, in your energy field. You may be spewing it out into the world, but it all comes back, and it isn't health producing for our cellular system. Everything is vibration. And as we speak, we create. So being conscious and being highly intentional to speak beauty and to create beauty as we speak. One of the questions you sent me about how does this affect our sense of well-being and our awakening. And there's so much awakening possible in language. And I know I've shared this story a number of times elsewhere about walking in the park and saying to my invisible friends, please give me a new word. And they instantly gave me the real significance in the word beautiful. They defined it explicitly, and it isn't look like Britney Spears or act like this person. It is beautiful. And each of us, as the infinite, infinite form, as we actualize our potential to be an expression of infinite love, intelligence, what comes forth to us and through us is so beyond our limited sense of our own beauty and intelligence. We have a capacity that exceeds, that is like the superhero we thought we were as small children. That is a reality. And this is the time to know that. And Joe Dispenza has courses in breaking the habit of being yourself. That's one of his books, and Becoming Supernatural. There are now processes that can really accelerate the letting go of the conditioning that caused us to believe that we are less than who and what we truly are as divine beings in this bio-robotic system. And this is the time for all of us to find our superheroic capacities and cultivate them. And when the doubt comes up and the belief that, oh, I don't have that, or that's about someone, not me, you would not be alive today. You would not have had the courage to incarnate in time for this big event in our species history if you yourself were not a being with enormous capacities that you may have forgotten, but it's who you truly are. And as we each hold the intention to be beautiful and to see the most beautiful in each other, not the craziness that we sometimes feel and experience when we're off kilter, but the true heart-centered soul that we are. That's when 8 billion strong, we are larger than what's going on right now. And this is the time, and the universe, I believe, is downloading higher ascension frequencies to us. So at the time of 5G, there's also the competition with 5D, the competition with 5G, and the impulse toward becoming the superorganism that we can be, connecting with our own highest expression and with each other. That unity consciousness impulse is being subverted by this effort to create a herd, or an ant heap out of human beings monitored by drones. I mean, it's just an exact mirror, and we have the key to transcend through our elevation of consciousness, and words have a role to play. And to get your toe in the door, just play with words and see what happens.
It sounds like words and the power of the voice is how we take our power back, because that's at the foundation of who we are, the sounds and the vibrations that come through and to us.
Yes, those we speak and those we hear. So maybe being less available to media and all the conflicting stories and all the fear mongering on all sides of the equation, and spending time within ourselves, within that sanctuary of our own heart, and discovering that the center of the universe is in the center of our own being, and the power of the universe is within our capacity to speak a new reality into existence. And I look at the fact that the word life stream is the same as life's dream. We are collectively dreaming this together, and we can dream a higher vision of possibilities into the reality of this dimension, because we are dreaming it together, and words create a lens for it. And that life sentence I shared is a very dark lens. And how about a lens that speaks to higher possibilities? So I can share some of these ideas in verse, some of which I have fully memorized, and some I'll need to read a little bit, but we don't have to go there either. On my YouTube channel, there are a few poems, and I'm excited to say that my poem on the letter S, called Esoterica by Laurel Airica, the definitive exegesis on the letter S in verse, will soon be an animation. And I mean, I wrote this poem about in the mid-90s, and at the time I was friends with Dr. Leonard Schlein, a man with an S name, and he was writing the alphabet versus the goddess, and I think he was one of the first to whom I read that poem. And he said, I don't know why people aren't paying you millions of dollars for your poems. So I have so much work that I've created, and this piece, animated, is going to set the stage for creating more animations of my verse, because the way I play with words and the way I put them together is music that sings the heart and awakens the mind. So stay tuned. If you're a subscriber at my website, wordmagicglobal.com, you will be informed when it becomes available, and you will also receive my poem, my book, my ebook, which is called The Book of E, a book of alphabet alchemy.
Please tell the listeners where they can find these amazing animations when they're ready, because obviously you said you're putting your energy towards that, and I'm excited to see the fruits of this.
Thank you. I'm delighted too. And so there's my website, wordmagicglobal.com. There's a Patreon site, patreon.com, wordmagicglobal. There is a YouTube channel. And because it's rather spendy creating this animation, it's going to be offered pay per view, and so that I can recover my costs and I can have the funding to create a lot more. So as a subscriber to my website, you'll get the free Book of E, and you'll receive announcements about when Esoterica by Laurel Airica becomes available. First, it will be an animation, then it will be a book, and then, oh my gosh, I can't wait to make an animation of a poem called Meta Whimsical Rhyme Diamonds. There are so many fun, beautiful pieces that will be illustrated books and animations, and it will take some popular support to make that happen. But sign up on the website and also go visit YouTube, and there'll be announcements on both places. Thank you.
Fantastic. Please go support Laurel Airica. She is bringing down the language of the birds and making it easy for us to understand. I've certainly benefited a lot from your wisdom, Laurel. So again, thank you. We're so grateful that you're able to join us here, not only on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast, but the second edition of our special new series podcast called The Synchromystic Experiment in the Ever Expanding Now. So
That
Laurel,
is a gorgeous title.
thank you. And we're hoping to help people see what there is to be seen, right? Thank you for tuning in. The journey continues from here on patreon.com/MFTIC. Go there to see everything that there is to be seen in the synchromystic exploration of the ever-expanding now, because this was the experiment, folks. You found the results in your life. Now come join the journey. Take it on full swing with us on patreon.com/MFTIC. You can also support us on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/MFTIC. That's the place to go. And we have over 50 episodes of content on the Patreon, as well as the entire conversation with Laurel Airica. Thank you for joining us.
Yo!
And have a great day, moment, in the now, wherever you are.